We got Gators Breakdown here. We know we're business.
Gators Breakdown, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I am your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Coming at you, transfer portal news as the Gators getting two right here on this Sunday. Hey, maybe they're not done. I don't know. I didn't want to be held hostage all night. If I have to do another episode, it'll be just fine. But just in case not, so I can do something a little bit later. I am on vacation. So yeah, this is, I guess, to be expected, Christmas vacation. So we know how vacation goes for me. It turns into a lot of commitment work, but hey, we'll take it. So anyway, Deshawn Purdie, Kofi Asare, right here, transfer portal acquisitions for the Gators. We'll get into what both those guys are right here on this episode of Gators Breakdown. Everybody hit that like button if you're joining us right here live or watching the replay. You can subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform as well. Plenty to get into with these two guys. And look, young guys, so not a whole lot out there on these two acquisitions, but certainly positions of need for the Gator at quarterback and edge rusher, which we all know. No surprise there. But we'll get into both these guys. And hey, maybe, like I said, maybe the news not done yet. We'll see. I know Dallas Wilson, and he was on campus this weekend. We saw him at the basketball game. He was at the bowl game as well on Friday night. So, look, it's a matter of time. As close to 100%, feeling good about that one. And then, of course, Jonte Cook, the other transfer receiver from Texas, was on campus this past weekend as well. We've seen the images floating around social media and all that. Like I said, if I have to come back later tonight and do another episode, so be it. But I want to go spend some time with family too this holiday season. So go ahead and get this one out of the way. If I said, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. No big deal if I have to hop back on. But let's get to some comments before getting here. Jam says in South Dakota, we call this Indian time. Montreal Hall, some Gators there. Gator fan Kavan, Dallas Wilson with some claps. I'm assuming that goes Dallas Wilson, clap, 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 clap. There we go. I think I got you. I think I got you on that one. Wally Gator, Merry Christmas, Gators. Hey, yeah. Speaking of that, my parents got me the new LED lit up hex head gator head back there. So changing the setup a little bit. Thanks, Mom and Dad, for that. Wally Gator, hey, he says bowl game replay on SEC Network tonight. So there we go. If you're not watching Gators Breakdown, after you're watching Gators Breakdown, go watch the bowl game there. Muddy Waters, people need to chill on Dallas Wilson, acting like he still isn't going to come here. He's been to the bowl game, basketball game, had a visit. He's interested. It's cool. It's cool. Let's see. Muddy, do you believe the staff will relax now and back off portal commits? And besides Cook, till the next portal cycle? I'm not sure. Offensive linemen, I think. Safety, defensive backs. We'll see. We'll see. Dead period, of course, coming up a bit, but the guys still have till the 28th to make their decision, and then transfer portal, and also your teams that are playing now. The players that are playing on these playoff teams, there's 8 left now, or even the ones from last night. Well, never mind. We're still in the portal window. But outside the portal window, you have 5 days till after their last game. So teams keep winning, and these 8 teams that are still playing, there's 5 days till after their last game. So there's still a little more out there. All right. Here we go. Let's get into some talk right here. Deshawn Purdie, he signed with Florida out of the transfer portal from Charlotte. 6'4" quarterback, 220 pounds. He was a true freshman at Charlotte this past season. Completed 100 of 200 passes, so 50% there. Accounted for 802 passing yards. 1,802 passing yards, along with a 10-6 touchdown to interception ratio. Also made a visit to Georgia and North Carolina. A good sign that those programs are interested, I believe. The Gators hosted Purdie on an official visit last weekend, which was his first time in Gainesville. And look, now when you look at this position, as I said, quarterback, you know you needed it. And it's not that you needed somebody to come push DJ Lagway. You needed somebody to come back up DJ Lagway. So right now, this gives Florida game experience, depth, and more than what we were getting this past season when Aiden Warner had to come into play. The trait that stands out the most with Purdie is that frame, of course. He does, and with that frame, he has the arm to push the ball down the field. Something we know we lacked with the other quarterbacks on the roster besides DJ Lagway. So staff identified that. Hey, and we know Billy Napier's offense, you've got to be able to push the ball down the field. So those play action deep shots that are a big part of this offense, that won't be going away if Purdie has to play and, hopefully nothing more than mop up duty and certainly not asking for any type of injury for DJ Lagway. But that's why you bring in a quarterback like that, the just in case scenario. So credit to him also. I think when you look at this, credit to him for coming in this spot with DJ Lagway leading the charge. Of course, starting won't be likely unless there's injury, but he wanted to be here anyway. And if you go back and look at his true freshman season, this past season, he was in competition with former Gator Max Brown at Charlotte. So remember, a year ago, Max Brown going to Charlotte. A year later, Florida getting a backup quarterback from Charlotte. So pretty funny how the transfer portal works sometimes. So he was in competition there with Max Brown. Max Brown got to start the season there at Charlotte. Both quarterbacks battled injuries. Looking at Purdie, he can make plays with his legs as a dual threat, but looks to pass, then become a runner. In his first college action against North Carolina early in the season, he came in for Max Brown after halftime. Charlotte was down 21-6. He led a touchdown drive, making plays with his arms and with a deep pass and a chunk yardage run with his legs, capping it off with an RPO, giving Purdie a chance to either hand off the ball, keep it himself, or keep it himself and run, or hit his touchdown in the flat for an easy touchdown. And he made the right decision. A nice, easy throw to the tight end for the touchdown in his first drive as a college football player. So, he just let it come out against North Carolina, down 21-6, led a touchdown drive. So showed a lot on that one drive, but of course, a developmental quarterback. Nothing outstanding, but you don't have a lot of outstanding around you at Charlotte at the same time. But should be looked at as a developmental quarterback. But not necessarily he's not your plug and play guy. Like, you're not going to bring him for Florida and boom, he's just like ready to go. He's a developmental guy. Nothing wrong with that. He's a true freshman coming from Charlotte. The incredible physical tools and that deep ball. I'm telling you, if you go look at the highlights, that deep ball is just a flick of a wrist. I mean, he's got the deep ball down. So I think he's a better runner than what stats say. But those stats aren't good as far as rushing goes. Rushing 41 times for negative 130 yards. If you know anything about college football, sacks count as rushing yardage. He was sacked 24 times. So that negative 130 yards, sure, it comes from that. It makes that stat look worse than it really seems. I did go and dive into the PFF stats a little bit, and they did show 12 scrambles for 92 yards on the season. 5 rushes of at least 10 yards. But he did have negative 11 yards on design runs, according to PFF, and 6 runs that went for a first down. So, like I said, roller coaster, nothing really consistent there, but the scramble aspect of him being a quarterback, there was some positive there with his legs. Did play the season with a non-throwing hand injury and leg injuries at some point this season as well. So, all in all, an option behind Lagway if something was to happen to Lagway. Hopefully nothing does. Purdie can develop, come in and mop up duties, but also give some depth ahead of Tramel Jones as he comes back from injury this past high school season. Who knows what else happens in the depth chart for Florida quarterback. But Tramel Jones, you bring him in from Mandarin there in Jacksonville, gets hurt early in the season. So he's on the mend. And now, gives him a chance to develop even more and just deepens Florida's quarterback room. So, all in all, for what you were looking for in a quarterback, and I said, it's going to be hard to bring in any type of name quarterback, any quarterback that wants to play a lot. That's going to be tough. DJ Lagway's the guy this year. DJ Lagway's the guy next year. Good luck selling any kind of transfer with, okay, come compete. You're not competing with DJ Lagway. We know the reality of the situation. We know the reality of the situation. All right, let's go to the next one. Kofi Asare from UMass. 6'5", 250 pounds, recorded 30 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and a fumble recovery in 2024 as a redshirt sophomore. So certainly Florida looking for edge with Pyburn out, TJ Searcy out, both those guys entering the transfer portal, and now Florida having just George Gums, who's played that F spot or the jack spot at that edge group. But the only guy with experience. We saw him play a ton in the bowl game, more than he had all season, as far as not having to rotate with Searcy, not having to rotate with Pyburn. Those guys are out now. Florida had to go get an edge player and found one here in Asare. And I just read you his stats. I'll come back to those stats because there's a little comparison I want to show you guys. So definitely looking for that fit and that jack edge spot for the Gators. Before arriving in Gainesville, Asare visited several other schools. South Florida hosted him last Friday through Sunday. Virginia hosted him Monday and Tuesday. Mississippi State left a very strong impression during his official visit right before his Florida visit. So Gators Online had a pretty good interview. Shout out to those guys. I can't remember if it was Keith or if it was Corey, but either one. I think it was Corey, but had a nice interview with him. And the big takeaway, because I don't want to steal their thunder from their article, but the big takeaway for me and the interview with Asare was he had to say, quote, "They said I got all the tools on the field already. They just want me to get bigger and stronger so I can dominate with the tools I already have." Asare's got 2 years left. So, but of course, this is a guy who shown flash, shown some potential at the lower level. Can it be replicated? Now, I went and looked at, he shared some highlights. And of course, highlights are just all the good plays. But that's what you're looking for here is, what's the good that shows. And of course, I'm not a talent evaluator by any means. I'm not a scout by any means. So at the most probably basic level of it, from me looking at an edge player, I think he shows he can get off blocks. Good use of bend and hands at that level shows. I think that what caught my eye the most was shows many ways to get around or dip during contact to get around the tackle. Good pursuit, good closing speed, and I thought showed good play recognition and shows that a lot on the read option plays. Also getting into the thrower lanes, making throws difficult for the quarterback. So I just like the way he really attacks, finishes plays with physicality. That's another thing that stood out. Arrives with intention, arrives with a mean streak. So also played kickoff return there for UMass as well. So maybe a special teams player for the Gators there. So look, I think when you look towards 2025 season, knowing you don't have Pyburn, knowing you don't have Searcy, you got Gums. So this is somebody to pair with George Gums there for the Gators. And that's the comparison that I wanted to throw up for you guys because last cycle, a year ago, Florida brings in a very little known edge player named George Gums, and it's pretty hotly contested of why are you bringing in a player there from Northern Illinois. Well, turned out pretty well for Florida as far as a pass rushing edge goes. So the comparison, guys, is pretty darn close to what George Gums Jr. was in 2023 at his previous stop at a lower level and what Asare is this past year at UMass. George Gums Jr. in 2023. I mean, look, 6'4", 249. Asare, 6'5", 250. All right. Very, very, very comparable size. Very, very comparable stats when you look at it, too. From George Gums Jr. last year to Asare this year. Gums last year played in 12 games, started the last 7 consecutive at defensive end. He finished with 32 total tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, 3 quarterback hurries, 2 forced fumbles in his first season on defense. So then compare that to Asare this year, He had 30 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss. So he had 2 less tackles, 1 less tackle for loss, 1 half sack less than what Gums did at Northern Illinois last year. So very comparable stats going from a lower level and now making that jump. Now UMass probably, UMass played Georgia this year. They played Mississippi State this year. So there's some tape on him as well that you can see versus SEC competition. Some of those stats, some of those highlights that I watched were against those two teams. But then George Gums, you look at him, what he did in 2024. And he replicated his tackle total. 32 tackles last year at NIU, 32 tackles this year at Florida. He had 4 quarterback hurries this year for the Gators, 5 sacks for the Gators this year. So George Gums had more sacks at Florida than he did last year at NIU. He had more tackles for loss this year. So he made a jump and played pretty well given the jump of competition at the same time. His 8 tackles for loss were second on the team. And he had to rotate a good bit. He played a good bit of snaps, but still rotated with Searcy. Still rotated with Pyburn. So for Gums, you expect to jump next year because he'll be getting more snaps. And now he'll be sharing them with Asare, and we'll see how deep Florida goes there too. With as we've already discussed, maybe LJ McCray slides over and plays that role some. Maybe another linebacker comes up and plays that jack role sometimes as well. Cam James, as Billy Napier mentioned too, as a name to watch out too. So, Florida might be done at edge here and just use some of the guys on the roster that might have been considered an F edge spot or an outside or one of the other linebackers like maybe an Aaron Childs or a Pup Howard slides over in certain situations and plays more of that role. But if you can get Asare to do what George Gums did this year, while maybe Gums takes a step, then I think that's kind of what you're looking for as maybe the ideal way this plays out at the edge spot for the Gators. So I thought it was, and maybe I'm reaching a little bit too much here. I'm not saying it will be replicated. You guys let me know in the comments, but I just thought it was pretty crazy to see how similar the stats were for both these guys. And the size as well. You can see what Florida's looking for at that spot. 6'4", 6'5", and 250 pounds. But when I went and compared the stats, I was like, man, these are really similar. Both these guys looking really similar here. So we'll see. Of course, we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. I think you hoping that Asare can make the same kind of jump with the rising competition. A good combo with Gums. But for Asare, he doesn't have to be the guy at the spot. He could be one of the guys at this jack spot. So now taking a look at it, with Asare and Purdie on board as we look at the transfer portal here for the Gators. The Gators now have 4 commitments from the transfer portal. The other 2, UCLA wide receiver J. Michael Sturdivant and Michigan punter Tommy Doman. So we'll see where that goes. Hopefully Florida adding more here in the coming days. But there we go. This Sunday produces at least 2 for right now. We'll see what happens. There for the Gators. Certainly. Like the additions Florida's made. You needed a backup quarterback. You weren't going to get much in much there. And, in terms of a lot of production there. Thought it was pretty interesting. I remember Georgia got interested there in Purdie. So the Gators come out with Purdie in the quarterback room. S-Spec does say, I would love to take TJ Moore from Clemson. Let's see. I know there's a lot of talk out there about that one. Would he be leaving Clemson? And look, there was a handful of Clemson players basically telling Clemson fans, thank you. And kind of looks like some goodbyes in a way. But no, I don't know. No, but we'll see with that one. We'll see. There was a lot of talk coming up this week as well, even before the Clemson Texas game. We'll see if TJ Moore enters the portal. If he does, you've got to think Florida would be in the running, in the mix. But that's got to happen first. Let's see. Let me go back to where I was in the comments, and then we will sign off here. I know it was going to be a little shorter episode. There was a lot to be getting into. here with the transfer portal, but there we go. It's sorry guys, trying to read the comments there. Brian says, "Good evening, good evening all, and to all a Merry Christmas. Go Gators." Muddy Waters, was there anyone who impressed you on Indiana, Tennessee, SMU, or Clemson that we could go after if they entered the portal? Yeah, we just talked about TJ Moore at receiver. Indiana's they got a DB. There was maybe talk of him entering the transfer portal, or he did maybe. Well, they just played yesterday, so or Friday night. I'm not sure, but there was a DB Indiana had that I certainly remember it pinging in my head about how good he could be. Maybe. Senator Thrax says it's hard, if not impossible, to get a top-notch quarterback who knows they will be a backup with no chance of earning the starting job. Yeah, I mean, DJ Lagway's name is out there, and look, the staff, the way. And I remember something Chimere DK said last week when he was interviewed for the bowl game, and somebody asked him about the message he shares to recruits and players thinking about coming to Florida. And he's like, what they have told you is what you're going to get. And look, that kind of goes to this point too. And look, players aren't there stupid either. They know who DJ Lagway is. But this staff also isn't selling, hey, come compete with DJ Lagway. Look, you always want competition. Don't get me wrong. But we know how this one's playing out. And nobody's ignorant enough to talk themselves out of that. DJ Lagway's a guy. So yeah, it's going to be hard, if not impossible, like you say, to go get a top-notch quarterback, at least through the transfer portal. Now, you've seen it recruiting. Tramel Jones, 4-star, didn't mind coming the year after DJ Lagway. Griffin, the 26th quarterback in the mix as well. So in some ways, you are stacking quarterbacks here at Florida. Kevin Reed says, can now use Lagway with the full playbook and have a capable dual-threat quarterback. That was the thing about Purdie to me, as I said. He's a dual threat, looking to pass. He's not in the runner type, but can get away, can escape, will look to scramble if something's not there. Gator Fan 88, will Kofi be another Gumps? I think was that a shot at the bowl game announcers the other night because they could not say his way. What were they calling him? Did they call him Gump sometimes and they call him George Grums? I think it was, or something like that. They couldn't get his name right. But yeah, I think that's what reminds me of Gums. And I just showed you guys the stats. Very, very comparable. Very comparable sizes. I think it will be. I think it's pretty fair to compare there. Soydrick Cray. This would be awesome. Florida will be the first school in history to win the championship in basketball, baseball, and football in the same year. Basketball team looking mighty fine. They're blowing out UNF on Saturday. We know the baseball team will be in the mix, as they always are. And next year, 2025, a lot of people are circling for this Gator team. Merck's give a shout out to the Billy haters. Got to believe in what he's doing. I don't tell people how to fan. I just don't. I don't. Look, if it doesn't work out on some things like a game prediction or just something like that, I got enough fun in calling my own self a dummy. I don't need to be calling anybody else a dummy. Amir, man, this is one I can't really get a hold of. This one. The info out there for offensive linemen in the transfer portal is pretty hard to get right now. So Amir asked, do you see any offensive tackles opening up in the portal worthy of us taking? There's not much out there right now. And as we said, that's why I thought it was big. Florida had some guys returning. We're still looking for a right tackle, I think, in the transfer portal. But certainly still good that you had your guys in the trenches on both sides with Caleb Banks returning, the 4 offensive linemen returning. We'll see what Tyreek Sapp decides to do. He hasn't announced anything yet, but I assume he's back next year as well. So trenches, it's hard to get that in the transfer portal if guys that you really can rely on. And So far, so good there for Florida as far as retaining guys. But going to your point, still got to go out there and get that offensive tackle. Supposed to have a visitor this weekend. That ended up not happening. Some talk of Florida may have another target out there. And I forget who it was. I didn't really get a chance to look. I had a really busy weekend with the holidays. But I knew there was one offensive tackle that was supposed to be on campus. It didn't happen. Some think that is by plan and Florida targeting and pivoting elsewhere. So, all right, there we go. Thanks, guys, for hopping on. Shorter episode right here. Just looking at the transfer portal, following this news. We'll see where it ends up going. But certainly had to get on here, talk about this big Sunday as Florida adds to the roster and some pretty important pieces for this Gators team to make a run in 2025. That'll do it for this episode of Gators Breakdown. Everybody, thanks for the comments in here. Thanks for the hopping in here for the short notice as well. And everybody hit that like button one more time if you haven't done so yet. Subscribe right here on Gators Breakdown. Everybody out there, have a Merry Christmas. Have a happy holidays. That'll do it for this episode of Gators Breakdown. I am your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Guys and girls out there, thank you for joining me on this episode of Gators Breakdown.